a racial justice series. And in my sessions on racial justice, I'm focused on the facilitator taking a stand. We're going to learn and we're going to demonstrate and we're going to practice. Everybody who comes, we're practicing taking a strong stand for yourself.
Imagine a day when your neighbor come by with your $1 million check delivered to the wrong address. No protest, just fessed up, relaxed, and pass back out of respect. Re-envision the hood, spotlighting the good vibes and intentions many don't like to mention. What's good for the goose should be produced for the gander. White types of all colors condemn thieves like Alexander. Everybody want their grandma safe in a space free to tour. Question you feel good about yours, going to the local store. Let your stance. Got a passion for life. Within a love. So that's in your chest, and a little hope. Got a passion for life. Passion, let your stance. And a little hope. So the world need love and hope logos. We got power to make it jump like pogos. Plan a stance for inner love, enhance your chance. We dance above the lance of the iron glove. Time to elevate like our name was Otis. RJC style Lotus. Been positive to notice. Wanna survive, better know this. The fake cake is what we bake. We don't have to be brothers to understand the sense and do unto others as you would have them to do unto you, your crew, your fam, favorite woman, a man. Expand the race or nationality. It should be the same mentality. Let your stance. Random thoughts. Within a love. Letting your stance and heads in your chest to advance. And a little hope.
Participate and support our efforts. It is literally the village growing the nation is what we're trying to do.
You're on mute, Diane.
Okay, I will start again. And here we are. Welcome, everybody. I want to point out that Sundiata is the developer and creator and artist on the video that we just saw. So welcome today. This is a very special event. And I want to tell you something about the two people that are in conversation today. It's a privilege to speak with these two extraordinary individuals. They bring a wealth of experience, passion, and dedication to the Racial Justice Collaborative. First, let me introduce T.C. Wilson Jr., or TC as we know him. He comes to us from Southwestern Pennsylvania, where he was born. He was ordained by the Bethlehem Baptist Church. TC's life and work are deeply rooted in the teachings of Christ, especially Matthew 25:40, which calls us to serve the most marginalized among us. His unwavering commitment to community development and humanitarian outreach is a testament to his dedication to embodying these teachings in every aspect of his work. TC is a spiritual leader and an accomplished professional with an impressive background in research, project management, and community programs. TC excels in building relationships with key leaders to foster transformative change. He provides strategic oversight and executes innovative programming. His work as global missions pastor for Africa with Amazing Things, the church, is a ministry that reaches millions worldwide through virtual programming. And that's just one example of his broad impact, whether it's managing crises, promoting cultural awareness, or training and development teams. TC's strengths and expertise are vast. He has a unique ability to connect with and uplift diverse communities, and his dedication to fostering inclusivity and healing is truly inspiring. His involvement in organizations like the African American Shakespeare Company and the African American Asian American Roundtable, and his advisory role in recovery and community development initiatives are just a few ways that TC continues to lead and inspire. Joining us in conversation also is Dr. Lane Arye, a founding member of the Racial Justice Collaborative and a senior trainer at the Process Work Institute. Lane's work is a powerful blend of heart and intellect as he partners with individuals, communities, and organizations to create more freedom and wholeness, both internally and externally. Whether he's facilitating complex conflicts or guiding social justice groups through deep transformative processes, Lane brings a compassionate, skillful presence that supports authentic dialogue and healing. He's also the author of The Vicious Cycle of White Centrality and Dr. Kenneth V. Hardy's The Enduring, Invisible, and Ubiquitous Centrality of Whiteness, where he delves into critical insights on race and power dynamics. Lane's contribution to the RJC and beyond is invaluable as he helps others navigate the challenging yet essential work of social justice and personal transformation, making a significant impact in the world. On behalf of the Racial Justice Collaborative, we are honored to bring you this conversation between two outstanding individuals. Each brings unique perspectives, expertise, and dedication to the ongoing work of racial justice and community building. Let's dive right into this dialogue, explore their journeys, and learn from their profound experiences and insights. And now, I turn the rest of this meeting over to Lane.
And TC, thank you, Diane.
Hey, Kelly, it's Tomas calling from California. Email, didn't hear anything back, and calling.
Hey, Tomas, you're not on mute. Hi, Kelly. I just wanted to say it's a pleasure to have you here today, TC, and to talk with you. I just want to say that we're going to be talking for about an hour, give or take, but I don't know, I'm just reminded of being in a Baptist church in Oakland, uh, and and on the program it said who's going to give what talk and who's going to sing what song and everything like that. And at the bottom of the program, it said, program subject to change without notice due to controlling influence of the Holy Spirit. So I want to say we're supposed to talk for about an hour, but we'll see what happens.
Okay.
And I just want to say that in addition to all of those things that Diane said, which are beautiful to hear again, TC is just a really man with a big, generous heart. And yeah, when I first moved to Oakland in 1999, TC, we had already known each other for years. I guess we met in the early 90s at World Work seminars and have seen each other at many World Work seminars. And when I moved to Oakland in 99, yeah, you invited me out to a blues bar and then nudged me to get on stage because it was a jam session and it was fun and I appreciated the invitation and the nudge and the welcome to Oakland.
Yeah, I remember that.
So we always start out by here at the Racial Justice Collaborative by identifying ourselves racially. So I'm a white man. And how do you identify yourself, TC, racially?
Well, I'm seen by the world as an African in America, but I have fun. I am also a son of the Confederacy. If you and those from the South know what that means, because some of my ancestors are Caucasian. So when I was living in Georgia, there was a little winery I went to, and a gentleman we're talking about where we came from, and my family was not far from Macon, maybe 100 miles east of Macon, was where my maternal grandfather's folk came from. And my brother is really into where we came from and knowing all of how our blood got mixed. And so there's a side of my family that's Dixon that the blacks and whites come together for family reunions, even though that one side owned the other side, but now they break bread together. I'm not there yet, but I just find that to be a novelty. I was playing a little place called American School of Music, and it was a jam session, and the cat came in wearing a Confederate hat, and I was like all over the place with my emotions. I'm like, oh, well, am I going to hit him in the head with my sax, or am I going to play some music with him? So all that's in me, but I identify as an African in the United States.
Mm-hmm. Oof, there was a lot right in that. Wow.
Yeah.
So you're not quite there yet, breaking bread with those
Well, I
folks.
think I can break bread with them. I think at this, I didn't. There's a lot of emotions in there, but we are connected by that same bloodline. Mm-hmm. And even we have a real conversation, how that actually went. So it is what it is. But I know when I was first invited, that was maybe it was 20 years ago. I was like, hell no, nah, that ain't that, nope, nope, nah, unless you're gonna split the land. See, we having a casual conversation, but I flipped the script to saying, we're mine. We did the work. But that's part of it. But it's bigger than that now. We can share that, the fact that we share that common heritage. I've not done it. My brother has talked extensively to all those different family members coming from different places.
You were the first man. You were. Somebody's not on mute. You were the first person who ever said, "Where's my 40 acres and a mule?" Ooh, that I heard. I,
Okay.
I remember that many years ago, and yeah, split that land. We talk a lot here at the Racial Justice Collaborative about reparations. So
Yeah.
yeah. So you start talking about your roots. So what kind of formative experiences from your childhood and your youth set you on your path, like from family or church or school or community or racism?
It was my father's family. My father's family was, we would get together every Sunday at my grandparents' house. And they discussed everything from being Negro and Black and colored and what that meant, or being involved in the civil rights movement. And on the other side, very spiritual. But on my maternal side, it was deeply rooted in a relationship with the Creator. And sometimes those things came into conflict. But for me, as a kid, I had a sense of rage. That was like, that drove me. It wasn't like I was mad at anybody, I was mad at the situation. When I was a kid, we saw dogs biting people, or I would hear stories of my father when he went south. He wasn't a well-behaved Negro, so he wasn't accustomed to those customs. They had to get him out of Dodge. Or to hear my father talk about how he was going to go to the civil rights march with King in the 60s. But when we were talking earlier on, before this thing became about, it made me dream and look at what Southwestern Pennsylvania actually looked like. When I was in college, the Klan burned a cross on our student. We had a cultural house, and they burned a cross on our lawn. We were having a celebration dinner, and they burned a cross across the river. And I had read that James Weldon Johnson was a reporter, and he went to a Klan rally. I context, James Weldon Johnson was a light-skinned brother, and I got a little darker hue. And me and some of my classmates went to a Klan rally to see. And that was awakening on so many different levels, because it spoke to one, what was Christian nationalism and how that had distorted everything. And the other part was, how dumb can you be? I'm driving a hoopty. Some of y'all may know what that is. If a car start, when you turn the key, you say, amen, we good to go. Because for as far as you could see in either direction, well, nothing but Klansmen. And when the young policeman saw us, he was like, oh my God, it's just me and these sick Black students who are here with all these Klansmen. What us gonna do?
What happened?
Well, I went by my family's house and said, I'm going to a Klan rally. And they're like, yeah, we need prayer. We need to have a prayer meeting right now. We need to lay hands on this boy because he may not see him again. Some of us are laughing, but it wasn't nothing funny at the time. My mom was like, Lord Jesus, how did I raise my son? But that was a pivotal moment for
First of
me.
all, first of all, why did you want to do that?
You don't show up at my house and burn something and say that you here and I ain't going to respond. I'm going to like say, okay, yeah, I'm scared. No, I wasn't. No, I couldn't do that. It was. I can't tell you why, but I knew that I was going. I'm like, you came to my house, came to my door, and said we here. Well, I'm man enough to say I'm here too. And then but it was interesting how my parents poured in me. So at one point, one of the folk with us said, we're going to go on the property where they were burning the cross. I said, that's private property. And if it's private property, they can open fire. One of the conversations that we had was we weren't going to carry weapons. We weren't going to do that. That didn't make sense either, but that's what we said. So I said, no, we can't go there, but we can stand here and watch and pay witness to what was going on. And that's what we did. We witnessed what they were doing. They were singing the same sacred songs that I sung in church. They were praying a similar prayer that I was accustomed to praying. And so I'm like, this is deep. But then as I unpack that, I understand it from a different place at this point in time in my life.
How do you understand that?
Well, there's a gentleman by the name of Kevin Cross. He wrote a book called One Nation. It's how capitalism impacts the faith tradition, or how nationalism impacts the faith tradition. And I think Lyndon Johnson, at the time that I was coming up from living in the Appalachian region, very financially depressed region, but a very rich region in terms of culture and the people who live there. It made me understand that if I can tell you that I'm better, Johnson said it best, if you tell poor white folk they better than them colored folk, that made their day and they can go on another day. That's not the totality of who they were, but that was a part of it, because I can say I'm better than you. That's not necessarily so. Those same people, when they became union workers, they stood side by side with women, blacks, and other folk in solidarity as brothers and sisters. But it was, sometimes we would wear a hat, but it was only temporary based on that moment or what was going on. It did not necessarily bleed over into other things. But if there was a crisis in town, like when the river would flood, I don't think people saw color, they saw a neighbor in need. So there was all those different ways that people saw themselves, but didn't see the interconnection that we shared. So when I say I was enraged, I'm like, what do I need to do to make myself better? So I had, what I didn't share was when I was a senior, I had suffered an injury where I became a quadriplegic. When I went to get up after a tackle, nothing work. Only thing that worked was my head. And I'm like, but I couldn't get up off the ground. So you have that. You have a physical impairment that may have changed my whole entire life, but there was a social justice component that even in sports, going to a predominantly white school, there was always that sense of racism. If there were, you could be the fastest, the biggest, the strongest, but there were only maybe 3 or 4 positions you could play on that team: running back, defensive end, or nose tackle. I don't care how good you were, you all stacked up in those positions, competing against each other. You were far superior athletes than the other guys, but you were stacked in those positions. So, I mean, I didn't even know about stacking at the time. I just saw it. And then as I get educated, I understood what was going on. But they kept us pitted against each other. But when practice, if we could break out of those roles, we could raise havoc. But we weren't able to start. We was far superior, but we couldn't start. Or if we were in the classroom, teachers would give you A's and B's based on the number of touchdowns or baskets that you made, or if you got a pen. They never championed your intellect. So when I heard Arthur Ashe say you had a better chance of becoming a doctor or a PhD than a professional athlete, I'm like, that upset me. That made me angry. So when I went to school, when I went to college, I was like, I'm not trying to hear all that other stuff. I'm just trying to say, how do I move through this? How do I maneuver myself through this maze? And one thing that I did learn, and I think when you met me, conflict was like, that's how it gets done. That's how it got done. That was in the landscape. Being from Southwestern Pennsylvania, when there was a strike, the homestead strike, it was violent. I mean, bloody violent. So I understood if there was going to be change, it was going to be some blood that had to be shed. Wasn't going to be peaceful. So when you met me, that just oozed up out of me. And even when I was speaking, when I was a youngster in college, my brother said, Thomas, Mama's not pleased with how you talking. Because I put some euphemisms together. And folks were rah-rah, and my brother said, man, that ain't where we come from. So, you keep saying good morning, you figure a way to communicate something that people is more palatable.
So yeah, I'm remembering when I met you and yeah, that you had a powerful presentation there. And so you're talking about the importance of conflict that you learned, and you've told me that you're a conflict theorist, or you used to be a conflict theorist. What do you mean by that?
Well, I read Karl Marx at an early age, right? But conflict, I think Malcolm said it best. Conflict is as American as apple pie. The war, the Revolutionary War, what was that? Conflict. The war between capital and labor, conflict. It was just about conflict. In terms of, you talk about, I think, 4th or 5th grade, you get American history. And you read the Articles of Confederation. It was about how do these rich folk run stuff and keep poor folk out of it. Conflict. Whether it was physical or mental, the conflict was always there. So that's all I knew. That's all I saw. In the labor movement, conflict. Power conceded nothing without a demand. So conflict was inherited in it. And even in my what was sacred, Christ goes into the temple and you has conflict when he turns the table over. From my perception, it was my perception as I didn't know I was poor until someone told me if you have more than 2.5 people sleeping in the room, that meant that you entered into poverty. I didn't know nothing about being poor. I knew about being financially challenged, but we weren't poor. We had a rich culture. We had a lot of love in the house. When family would come, we would laugh and sing and have a great time. But I knew about conflict, and I knew if things got hot enough, because when I was a kid, I saw dogs biting people. I saw police turning water hoses on people on TV. We even seen the Vietnam War on TV. So I was raised in conflict. So I knew about that. And in the sports that I participated in and excelled in, it was about conflict. If I was wrestling, it was conflict. If I'm playing football, it was conflict. If it was track, I had to beat you at the starting line. I would tell you how slow I would run and not to embarrass me, but that was conflict. So that's all I knew.
And so this is the theory of conflict that you were telling me about when you said you're a conflict theorist, or did you learn conflict theory also outside of your own personal experience?
Well, as a youngin', I studied sociology. So there were those who talked about cooperation, collaboration. Then there were those who Marx talked about the conflict between classes. We saw I'm oversimplifying, but yeah, I knew if you turned up the heat hot enough, change was going to come. When the inner cities began to burn, you saw social policy in the US begin to change. And one of the biggest conflicts it was around labor was how do you have free labor as opposed to slave labor? Slave labor. Or in the South, when people wrote laws to say, I don't want you to vote. I don't want you to be poor publicly, because now I can put you in jail for not having a dime in your pocket. You didn't break any rule, but you didn't have any money, so now you're a vagrant.
And we white people aren't mentioning that the reason you don't have anything in your pocket is because we won't give you a job.
Or I tie you to the land. Well, you have this white Anglo-Saxon Protestant work ethic that you want to champion, but the folk I came from worked hard every day. Hard work was never not part of it, because part of the faith tradition said if you don't work, you don't eat, but they bastardized it to a point where they, that's not what he was saying. But they manipulated it. So when you talk about conflict, that's all that I saw. And to this day, if you want to see something change, let the streets begin to get hot. Then you'll see, you won't see structural change, but you'll see some incremental change.
And you've told me you're a Malcolmite. Is what you're talking about connected with that?
If you look at Malcolm, or you look at that time frame, there was a Deacons of Defense who had took what Malcolm had said, and they said, we will defend ourselves. You will not come to our house at night and think you're going to burn something without getting burned yourself. If you're going to bring something, you're going to get some. So I remember as a teenager, the Klan was busy, and my dad said, boy, you know where the guns are. I'm 13 years old. But he was like, it's your responsibility if anything break off. You protect the house, you protect the family. I'm 13, 14 years old. So you're not going to come here and do what you think you want to do. I remember as a teenager, young folk like to date, and they were just dating everybody. But when a brother was dating a white girl, we made a little joke out of it. We'd say he turned Chinese. He hung high. Wasn't nothing funny about that, but it was real. So that was in the background. So in terms of that's where some of that came from. I knew if there was two sides going at it, if it got hot enough, they would find a way through some solution. The question was, what would that look like, and who would it give benefit to? So I knew that. I learned that. So that's why I became a conflict theorist. And then when I ran into Dr. Charles King out of Atlanta, Georgia, I'm like, you say you want to talk about race, let's talk about it. But I'm like, but he didn't give people the option to sit on their laurels and say, I'm going to talk about race, but I'm not going to change what I do from Saturday to Sunday. So that he used conflict but not allowing you to disappear. And he was in your face, and I love that. But to the benefit of those who came into that room, they came in a room willing to do work.
Could you say more about Dr. Charles King? I know that he was an important teacher for you.
Yeah, he was head of the Urban Crisis Center in Atlanta. He was a Baptist preacher too, but he ran seminars around race relations, and they would have conversations, but he didn't allow people to get stuck in their comfort zone. He would encourage them, or he would drag them to a place where they were uncomfortable. And I'm like, I'm in college when I was introduced to that work, but because of his work, it made me begin to do inner work. And the inner work was when we had a cadre of folk who worked together, we had to learn how, one, to talk to each other, one, how to be supportive of each other, and how to affirm each other. So we had to unlearn and unpack some things that we were bringing from our different. I'm from rural America, which I'm very proud of. I'm not an urbanite. So there's some things that I was accustomed to that my brothers and sisters who came from the inner city didn't know anything about, and vice versa. So we had to learn, how do we talk to each other in a constructive way? Because it was that thing of Willie Lynchism that said we had to be competitive. It was like, no, we can't be that. How do we support each other on this college campus? Now, again, conflict allowed me to go to this school. It was litigation conflict. Pennsylvania was an atom state. That meant that they practiced segregation and higher learning. My uncle, who was far brighter than me, applied to the school that I excelled at and was turned down. Because there were two schools in Pennsylvania that was set aside to educate Black students, Cheney University and Lincoln University. But because of a federal mandate, I was accepted into this college. And when I got there, I understood that, and there were programs put in place to make it difficult for me to flunk out. I had to work at flunking out. So I'm saying there was conflict in the background. When I learned in process work, it was in the field. There was all this conflict going on, whether it was in the streets or whether it was in the courts. There was conflict saying, you will educate the folk who are of a darker hue, who are non-Caucasian. You will educate. You will put resources in place for their academic survival. So that's how I got there. And so I was working in they had an Office of Human Relations, and there was this great brother by the name of Dr. Mel Madden. He set up, when he saw us going through these changes, he used his skill set to help us augment our skill sets to have these conversations, to train each other, to sit in the hot seat and hear criticism from your peers, to affirm you, to say, this is what we need to do to survive in this academic environment.
And he was talking to students of a darker hue. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So can you go back to Dr. Charles King for a moment?
Yeah.
So you said that he would make sure that people were not comfortable. He would help people to be in that uncomfortable place.
He wouldn't let them sit in their comfort zone. Oftentimes when people say, well, I didn't create that. I didn't create slavery.
So you're talking about white folks now.
Right. Well, all the people in the room. I wasn't there when they wrote the Articles of Confederation. I wasn't there when they wrote the Constitution. I wasn't there when all these things happened. But the question then would become, are you a beneficiary of white privilege? Are you a beneficiary? Do you benefit from it? No, you did not write it. No, you did not create it. No, you did not create patriarchy. But do you benefit from it? He would bring that awareness. So when people say, well, I've never called anyone nigger, but when you're in your environment and people make racial jokes or sexual jokes, do you laugh? Or do you correct them by saying that's inappropriate? Are you silent when you should be an ally, when you could be an ally? Because that's just a conscious decision that you can make. But are you quiet? Are you complicit? So he will call that question. Or, I mean, that's what I got from Charles King.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And he wasn't polite about it. As a minister of the gospel, I mean, a lot of Christian nationalists will tell you that government is right there with kings and queens. They rule by divine right. But I look at that and say, I don't know about that. Even when I hear Paul say that, I'm like, I don't know, baby, because you you came from a different culture than the other brothers. But I understand why he said it. But I understand now when people say, well, white women who benefited from affirmative action. But when they talk about affirmative action, other people talk about affirmative action, they don't talk about white women benefiting in the United States. That's not part of the conversation. So he would say, you're a beneficiary, so why wouldn't you not be an ally in these other places, whether it's church, school, work, or play? Why aren't you an ally?
Mm-hmm.
Because I don't want that target on my back. I understand that. Because if I align myself with somebody and they're not in that in group, if I support them, I can become a target like them. So I become the last hired, first fired. That still exists.
That's something we talk about a lot at the Racial Justice Collaborative is white folks having skin in the game. It's like,
Yeah.
oh, am I going to do something to risk? If I am not risking anything, then I'm not really in it. Mm-hmm.
Right. And then the gentleman who helped me get some understanding during this season, Mel was a white professor, but he also was doing some work where he got called into court, but everything that his organization purchased was given to them by the federal government through the FBI. So he had skin in the game, and he was an ally. He was an ally.
So, what about liberation theology? How are you influenced by liberation theology, and how would you describe that?
I come at that from this perspective. Are you familiar with the doctrine of discovery?
Mm-hmm. We talk about it a lot here, yeah.
So if you say what is divine said, okay, you get a bunch of bad actors, but they're going to come into what's supposed to be the Lord's house to get blessings. So y'all go out there and I'm putting a simplistic spin on it. Y'all go do what you need to do, but bring back some of the money, give us our cut, and we good. Now, the flip of that is saying that God stands with poor people too. He's for everybody. So if he's for everybody, then poor people or people in struggle need to have a voice at every juncture of the road. A divine voice that says what you're doing is incorrect. So for me, liberation theology made me look at, question what I have been taught. Because if you think about it, like in my tradition that I came out of, the Baptists at large and the Southern Baptists split over slavery. They split. One said, yeah, we good with this, and they had a biblical reason for doing it. And the other side said, no, we don't think that's so much. And they split. And then they all became colonizers. They became missionaries of this gospel. But if you look at it on the surface, first you send the preachers, then you send the army, and then you send those folk who want to make more money. But if that's the goal, that's not the goal of what I understand Christ has taught. So liberation theology says it's all right for me to be who I am, but to have a voice and to challenge power whenever it's overstepping what I believe to be humane treatment or divine treatment of other people. It gives a voice to the voiceless, as opposed to when you say to slaves, we'll give you another form of the Bible and tell you that you're a descendant of this person because this person did this, you need to bear the brunt of white folk forever. Now, I may be dumb, but I'm not that dumb. Or you say, I went to the Smithsonian and I saw every people who had depicted how they saw their divine creator. It looked like them. Okay, I understand that. But is that what they actually look like? So it's all like behind color, folk play all these funny kind of games, so they made Christ look like a white dude. Really? The text said he had skin of bronze. I mean, that's what the text said. And I had to learn Greek and Hebrew, old school. It said he had brown skin. I'm not saying he African, but he looked kind of African to me. But he could have been Palestinian. He could have been whatever. So you start playing these games, and then for me, liberation theology says stop doing that. Because one of the deans for me, he wasn't necessarily a liberation theologist, but Howard Thurman, when he has a conversation with Gandhi, has this conversation about how racism impacts the Christian tradition. It's all through it. It's foul. So for me to understand my spiritual walk meant it had to be an inward journey. Because some of these institutions have been so corrupt. Corrupt, that's a good word. They were corrupted. And then people began to believe that. So when I see a brother like the head of the African American church, he says, wait a minute, no. That I have no place here. But if you say we're giving you this Bible, we've edited so it's in our favor, but you can come into my house, sleep with my woman, and say it's okay because she's not seen as human. So it then made me think, how can you say you're a people of faith, but you have slaves? And I question Judaism. I question any religion, the Muslim tradition that talks about that. I'm like, how can you own someone and treat them in that manner? And you say you have a divine being in your life. How do you do that? So in my work, when we did work with reparations on a global level, and I had a roommate from no, I'm blanking. But when he lived at, he was a slave. When was he got his PhD? Because the guy who owned the man who owned him, when his son went to school, his son didn't want to do any work, so the guy did the work and got a PhD. From grade school, Mauritania. From grade school to college, he did all the work. He got the PhD. So how can you say that you have a God, but you own slaves and you treat them in this kind of way? So liberation theology says, I have a voice and I can speak and I will speak and I will educate others to think differently. And even in my tradition, when we find people who look like me would tell people, oh no, keep your head down, say master, nod, we're gonna survive, we're gonna get through this. Well, there's many ways to get through it. I'll be linear. I can get up, I can get through it on my feet or on my knees. I choose to be on my feet. But when I'm on my feet, I do it on my knees because I'm praying my way through. But I'm standing like, this is patriarchal, right? I'm gonna be a man. I'm not gonna be less than some other man because someone else tells me that. Because one of the things that I kept hearing on TV was blacks they weren't smart enough to be quarterbacks. I heard that blacks couldn't lead in the military. I heard those things all my life. I mean, people they didn't have any shame in saying that. So when you hear that, you say, oh, I know better than that. But that's not but when you do your self-discovery, the person who owned the key to my prison was me. And I had to get that key, unlock the door and say, okay, now what you gonna do?
So that was
that comes at a price. That comes at a price.
What do you mean?
It comes at a price. If you unlock the door to your liberation and you say, I'm not going to become less than you, play the game that you want me to play, because I don't know the rules of your game, I'm not playing your game. I'm not going to try to fit into a box that you created, which I say called hegemony. You get the house. Corporations like people who are married, because if you're married, you got some responsibilities. So you may tolerate some stuff that you might not tolerate if you were by yourself. If you got your 2.5 kids, they still have to eat. So if I go along with your game and do what you want me to do, you can control me. But I say, no, no, you don't have that privilege over me. My folk already done slavery. They're already done being tied to the land by being, I'm blanking on the word, but you were tying me to a situation where I couldn't speak. I couldn't. I didn't went to the company. My family did go to the company store. I understand that dynamic. I'm not going in that box. So I scratch my way out. So when I heard people like Vernon John speak, I'm like, oh yeah, that's me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And Vernon John wasn't polite. So I wasn't trying to be polite.
And I think you've told me that liberation theology also taught you that liberation's not just for black folks, but also for women, for LGBTQ. Can you say a little bit about that?
It's for everybody who feels that they have been oppressed. And through that oppression, I shared with you a very personal story. In my family, well, I guess gay folk in everybody's family. It's how we deal with each other, right? I had an uncle, great uncle, one of the brightest men I've ever met. The name was Jay. So, you know, if he being a gay man, you can play all kind of names, but that. I was a child and he was 2 generations above me. But he loved on me in a certain kind of way that told me I was special, I was lovable, and I was going to be a great man. I have a niece named Shannon. Now, sometimes we'll buy into the dominant culture's way of looking at people. Christ said he came to embrace everyone, not just heterosexuals. And so it came a point, my mother had said something. She said, I'd rather you be with a broke down man than be with a woman. And I said, Mama, no, you raised her. Why would you say that? How do we rethink this? And I come out of the Baptist tradition. Now, you can be gay in the Baptist church, but you got to be quiet. You can perform certain things, but you got to be quiet. Now, during my same development, I came out of the Baptist church again. Women had to be quiet. They couldn't lead because the dominant culture or the Southern Baptist said that couldn't happen. So when you start unlocking, when I unlocked my door, I had to help unlock other doors that had been locked.
So
for
how
my
did you?
and my
I'm sorry.
uncle, I had to help them have a voice in the family. And my mother's a matriarch. You don't go against the queen in your family. And if you do, I learned you have to do it in love. I couldn't go toe to toe with her. She had rank on me. But she trained me. I said, no, Mom, we got to do this a different kind of way. So we had to retool that. And then in that, it made me deal with folk outside my family the same way. I'm just gonna have to love you for who you are. And hopefully you can do the same for me. Because I'm a piece of work. So how do we love each other and support each other? And then when dealing with those issues, I went to the elders. I keep saying I go to the elders. So that means I talk to folk who came before, who came after, and my contemporaries. I said, who has doctrine that support these positions and how that they get there? I also come out of a Quaker tradition. Now, Quakers take them 100 years to make a decision, but once they make it, they make it. But I was blessed to work in other environments. So faith communities, how did they make these decisions? And so some of it was through people's writings, and others were with communities who were challenged by these things, and they've addressed them.
So I want to take what you're saying and ask you something else, because you used to be a Baptist preacher and you have a long connection with the Baptist Church, and then you started to question and challenge some things there. What happened there, and how was that for you?
I'm still a gospel preacher. It's in my DNA. I think someone said it's the opium of the people, so I'm conscious of that. But what I'm also conscious of, that it's not based on what other folk want to define it as. Because they'll define it in a way that may be in their best interest. They may want to marginalize this or that. And I'm like, no, they all have to be on the table. And one thing that I did, the community that I came out of was it was communal. It wasn't the pastor was the leader, he was a spiritual leader, but the body had conversation. They learned to have this that the balance of having a conversation. How are we as a body going to do what we're going to do? They gave me the tools to craft the key. They gave me everything that I needed to stand. There were some good things in there, but when you start looking at how outside influences of a dominant group said, I'm better than you because of this or that. No, I had to rethink. I had to have conversations with that. Matter of fact, I shared with you when I went to my first intensive, I borrowed what Malcolm called the closet when I did my inner work. I would go into my spiritual closet and question everything that I had been taught. And it made me look at my secret text and say, am I applying it correctly? And then at the end of the day, it was like really simple, but you won't see it in Christian nationalism. It will demonize everything. Only 2 commandments for us. Love neighbor as self. Love the creator. That's it. But it doesn't come across like that. Doesn't even look like that. So for me, it was an inward journey that says, this is how I have to be. I can't speak for the denomination. I don't control them. I don't control the way they think. But I do control what I think and what I teach and what I present. I do control that. I work in a ministry where I'm probably the wild card, but we struggle together. We sometimes have harsh discourse, but when it's all said and done, you're my brother. So when I look at someone who I hated, Jerry Falwell, I said, that dude was smart. I use the name Herod. Herod was smart. This dude came up with a solar system back in the day. He wasn't no fool. But what was in his best interest? What was in Jerry Falwell's best interest? This dude saw what was happening to public education and carved out a niche. That had nothing to do with his divine calling, but he was like, how do I make more money from this? So my learning was do my inner work and hold myself accountable and put folk around me who will hold me accountable to what it is I proclaim that I believe in. Because I think churches can dumb people down to the point they'll walk into a wall and say they're not hurt. Religion has the ability to do that.
I just got to pause for a moment there and just say again what you just said. I just want to underline it for myself. I hold people accountable, and I put people around me who hold me accountable. That's like a menu for a good life. I really appreciate that. Wow. And you keep talking about doing inner work, and you mentioned the intensive course, and I imagine you're talking about a process work intensive course.
Yeah.
So it'd be great to hear a little bit how were you influenced by process work and world work?
There was a lady named Jackie Warren. I was working as a consultant for the Unitarian Church doing their community outreach. They had a ministry where they were looking at what was happening in the community of people who didn't look like them. And they brought me on. And Jackie said, there's a guy named Mendel's, Amy and Arnie, and I think you'll benefit if you go because you look like the way you do what you do. Y'all be good. Excuse me. You would be fine working with them. And at this time, working
We understood you the first
the
time.
community, my wife's watching, so I gotta be, do this right. So I would work for Banana Pudding. I would work for food. Because these are for organizations that didn't have any money. So Jackie said, Arnie and Amy were going to be on, I think, Merritt campus. And I went. And I'm like, I understood what they were doing. I didn't have the terminology, but I understood what the field was. I understood the different positions. I understood some of it. And then I wanted to learn more. And then I applied for, this is my season of enlightenment. So for this 7-year window, I was blessed with going to some of the brightest minds in process work community. Was one of those. They gave me a scholarship. And I would go and I sit and I watch. And it taught me that relationships could be valuable. So when I came back, I learned to work the relationship channel. Even people who I was adversarial with, I created relationship. How's your wife? How are your kids? Not just superficially, but as a human being. You're a human first. So let's connect on that level. We can agree to disagree on what we disagree on, but to work harder at developing the relationship and then to work more on the non-verbal, looking at the individual body language. So one of my great learnings from process work was to stop. Don't look so much outward, but look more inward. So one of my great learnings was the biggest revolution has to take place within myself. And for those 6 or 8 weeks or whatever it was a journey into self. It was to look at what was hindering me, what was I married to that wouldn't allow me to progress? What were my sacred cows that shouldn't have been sacred cows? So it made me take that inward journey. And that was a great learning.
Mm.
And then prior to that, then I heard about Diane, I heard about John, I heard about David, I heard about these brothers and sisters who had went to Stouts or Thos or wherever. I'm like, wow, I want to meet these folks. And one day I did. But it taught me sometimes when you sit in the fire, you got to sit there by yourself. And when you sit by yourself, that can be a scary thing. Because you can lie to yourself. But there's a part of self that said, I know you. What you gonna do now?
And sit there by yourself, you mean doing that inner work on yourself. You're sitting with the fire inside of you, not necessarily in conflict with somebody else.
No, yeah. It's me, myself, and I. We there. And sometimes, well, you need a tour guide to help you go in there. And once they give you the tools, then Dr. Madden began that process. But process work went a little deeper and faster. And then when I had to learn was go slower. Go slower. And when you went slower, you went faster. Because when you slowed it down, you had to look at every I. You had to cross every T. And sometimes the things that you saw you didn't like, and they would come back up. They would come back up. So that was a great learning.
Yeah, I just have to say you're really an incredible example for me of really looking at yourself and reevaluate having strong beliefs, taking strong stands, and then checking yourself out and like, okay, where might that not have been, where might you have been wrong there or hurtful or fooling yourself or something, and then actually making that change. I think that's so courageous.
Thank you. But it come at a price. James Baldwin wrote a book that called The Price of the Ticket. The ticket, the cost is expensive. The cost is expensive, but it makes you true to who you are. I remember being in the labor movement and calling it racist. I'm on staff for one of the largest unions, and I'm like, no, we're racist. We want to pimp black workers, or when we do certain activities as a faith community, we want to marginalize women, or we don't want to. And Oakland was a very violent city during this season, and I did something that took a lot of criticism for. I invited other people from their faith tradition to come. There were so many murders in that city during that season. Come and let's fellowship together. Let's pray together in our own authentic voice to however we do it. And folk were like, how do you as a Christian invite Muslims, folk from other traditions to come and do this? I said, we all live in the same city. Our children are dying together. They have this idea that they're not going to become 15 and 16 years old. So why would I not invite other people to do that? And so there's scars that come with that. There's scars that come with that. When you speak truth to power, you're not popular. Prop 8 in California, in the labor movement, it has everyone in it. But when you say the laws were written for people you get more benefits for being married than being single. I mean, it's just written into stuff.
By the way, Prop 8 in California was
It was
to,
affirming same-sex marriage.
yeah, exactly.
And to lead that charge on behalf of labor as a minister of the gospel, it was like, well, how do you do that? Why are you doing that? Shame on you. Oh, you can't come back here. Oh, you're not welcome here. Oh, no, we can't do that. We can't embrace you. Okay, don't embrace me. But I'm not talking about this civil society, and what you do in your own private tradition is your business. But if it's good for the goose, it should be good for the gander. But it comes at a price. It does come at a price, because you're going to speak truth to power. And I just find that that's what it has to be. You have to be consistent.
So that's where, I was talking before about having skin in the game as a white man, but now you're talking about having skin in the game as a straight man.
Yeah.
That you're going to stand for that, even though that's going to come at a cost for you.
It come at a cost. I remember I did some forum for American Friends Service Committee, a Quaker organization, and I went on the record as affirming same-sex marriage before I was conscious that I was saying it, right? I said it, but I knew what I was saying, because 2 years later, I'm pushing on this. But we're talking about, if you're talking about a republic or a theocracy, your theocracy can be whatever it is. But how do we live in the public square together? How do we live in public spaces together? So when I began to do community meetings, they were in like 3, 4, 5 languages. Whatever was being spoken, they could hear it in real time. Because I had learned as an organizer, if you did them in separate areas, what did he tell them that he's not telling us? We all hear it at the same time. Because during this season, I'm working on reparations on a global level. And I learned from working at the UN, folk hear it in real time. So how do we get those resources? And then I learned not to take everybody's money. Because I learned by going to Chapin Hall, that if I give you $1, I want to control how you think on that. And it also made me say, when all skin folk ain't kinfolk, taught me that. There was a brother named Senator Leroy Irvis. Folk talk about Willie Brown in California. Irvis was before Willie Brown. Black man over the Pennsylvania Senate. He told me, you can't trust everyone. I'm like, I fought him tooth and nail. The day of the Million Man March, I met him in the Philadelphia airport, and I thanked him for giving me that awareness. I think what he said was true. And lastly, the doctor who birthed me, Dr. Charles Booker, great doctor, Black doctor in Western Pennsylvania. To me, that's significant because these Black men poured in me, these Black women poured into me. They gave me this. And then when I became aware of the consciousness, and even to this day, my spouse, she's at Flintstone. She reminds me of what I need to be reminded of. So,
Wow, TC, you are really just sharing so much wisdom and experience. And one of the beautiful things about what we do here at the Racial Justice Collaborative is we bring the community also into sharing the conversation. So is there something else that you want to say before we bring other folks in?
I thank them for coming to hear my little story. Thank you.
Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you. I was going to say it's a beautiful story, and then I was going to say, well, I don't know, there's a lot of ugliness in it too. Yeah. So thank you. All right, friends. Well, anybody who wants to ask TC any questions or something that he said that resonated with you or moved you or reminds you of your path, just want to welcome folks in. So Diane, you're raising your hand. Jordana's raising hers. Diane.
Thank you. I don't see those things. There's something on here where you can, but I didn't see that, but thank you. So TC, you hit a lot of hot spots. I mean, not just for you in your life, but hot spots in the world. You started, well, what I heard, you brought the Bible in. And that's a big hot spot. That's a hot spot because it's all over the place. And especially like the Old Testament. It's one killing and massacre after another. And that is apparently what God said. And so, and then you move into the New Testament. And so from my own experience, I could just, and I imagine, is this true for you? No matter which place you find in the Bible, if you go into it deeply, it's very powerful and it can speak to you. So, but then you move to inner work and process work. And to me, that's like a continuation because inner work is how do you go into things deeply? And so then you go into inner work and then you empower yourself inside, but then you go out into the world through the unions and through missionary work, and then you're facing challenges and struggles that you have to be strong with. So it sounds like you have to go through a lot of challenges in life to find out who you are and really make yourself, cement yourself into that, and then work through people tearing you down all over the place. So how do you see that?
You said it. They're there, but it's the price of the ticket.
Oh.
I mean, when I was a kid, I heard Henry David Thoreau, Walt Emerson, and I chose to take the path less traveled. And when you take the path less traveled, sometimes you got to cut the brush yourself. You have to clear the trail yourself, for yourself. And for those who, we say those who come behind us. So that's what we have to do. We have to cut the path ourselves. I remember hearing Joni Mitchell, they chopped down Paradise to build up a parking lot. But what brings me peace at the end of the day is that I did the best I could. And some days I failed. I failed miserably. Then other days I'm like, wow, you the same dude. You got up and you moved forward. That's all I could do. Yeah.
Thanks, TC. Jordana.
So I want to echo what Diane said. Between the two of you, it was this amazing trajectory of young man moving forward. But TC, the thing that I wanted to ask you is, when you were discussing process work, you said you had questions that, well, in your introspection, as I understood, and you said, what were the sacred cows that shouldn't have been? And I didn't know if you might have an example or two of what you thought were your sacred cows, and then you found out maybe they shouldn't have been.
Patriarchy without accountability. We hear James Brown say it's a man's world, but it'll be nothing without a woman or a girl. So how I define myself as a man came from my family. So, but patriarchy can be seen as all these negative things. So it means, how do I become love? I came to the conclusion that it was a man's responsibility, my responsibility, to be the nurturer in my home. And as I was transitioning from being a warrior to being a senior, how do I balance that with love and compassion and a softer voice? But that's one of the sacred cows, because in a lot of ways, men, even in my culture, women in my culture, in the world that I came from, championed me being the head. But that meant balance. It didn't mean I could be the king. And even the thing about when we talk about ethnocentric moments, there was a time when we said we came from kings and queens. Then I had to say, wait a minute, kings and queens can do some things that other folk can't do that aren't always healthy. So is that really the healthy narrative that I want to drive? Yeah, I say I'm a king in my house, but am I a responsible king? Am I a loving king? Am I a forgiving king? Am I a balanced king to my queen? Or why is it that I have to be a king or a queen at all? I understood why it was a need to have that ethnocentric moment, but what did that mean for me really? Because then it really fed classism. And I think classism is really deadly in my community. I don't think I know it's deadly. So I had to figure out how I was going to maneuver with that.
Thank you. I have another question. I don't know if anyone else wants to pose theirs or comments. Lane, should I just ask my next question? You're on mute.
Carol had her hand up.
Looked like Carol put her
Okay,
hand
go
up.
ahead, Carol. Yeah.
Your microphone, Carol. You got to put your microphone on.
Mute. Okay. Just while you're talking about classism, TC, I I wanted to start by saying I couldn't get on for 20 minutes, so I'm really bummed. I missed your first 20 minutes, so I'm sorry about that. I was trying to get on. But while you're talking about classism, could you say more about that, since Marx was one of your teachers, and you just made that comment about how classism is deadly for your community. Could you say more?
Well, I say it in the context of the Willie Lynchism, but classism in particular, because I have more money than you, doesn't make you smarter than me, doesn't make you better than me, doesn't make me beholden to you. It means, how do we work together to do the things we need to do? In the Black community, there was a brother who owned Sheridan Broadcasting system. It was like a radio station, or he owned a radio station, very popular one. And this has class, but it also has colorism. Davenport was a very dark-skinned man. I mean, some of y'all know about the brown paper bag test. On my screen is black, and that's the color he was. But he owned $1 million station. This is back in the 70s and whatnot. But classism just says I'm elite over you. And from my perspective, it means you may have been blessed financially, but it doesn't mean that you get to make all the rules. Doesn't mean that we come to you for your benevolency because you give us, you may pay for this dinner or pay for that dinner. But how do we sit in the fire together and figure out some of these social ills that we need to address? But because you giving the money doesn't give you the most say. That's the context that I look at it in terms of the communities that I work in. There may be folk in my church who have a lot of money and they underwrite a lot of different things. They don't give you any more say. You may have more influence, but you don't have any more say. When we make a decision, it should be based on what's in our best interest as a group, not based on the number of dollars that you've given. When I look at classism and labor, we talk about Black Wall Street. And I champion that, but at the same time, were the workers any better in Black Wall Street than they were in the other place? Workers are workers. There's that tension between labor and capital.
Yeah, I asked that question. Sorry, Lane. I asked that question just because it's not only if you're referring to primarily the Black community, I think it's pervasive in all communities, in all colors, and we don't talk about it. We do not talk about it. Class has somehow really been repressed in this American Western cultures, and it's dangerous, I think, in all of our communities. So thank you. Yeah.
You're welcome.
Sorry, Lane, go ahead.
No. Thank you, Carol. I agree. I remember Daniel Hunter from Training for Change, and we used to have different folks from Training for Change coming to WorldWorks, and he would always be turn into his friends at World Work seminars, other folks from Training for Change saying, class.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah.
Sundiata.
I think Giordano was gonna say something.
No,
Andre-
you go ahead. You go ahead. I already did mine. If there's time, I'll do another one.
Okay, well, I was just gonna say, first of all, I enjoyed the talk. I was very interested in a lot of things you said. Gave me insight into certain things. My mom's lived in Pennsylvania for a minute, and I got a chance to see some of the culture of the Quakers and Amish in the area.
Yeah.
And so anyway, but my comment was really more about what you were talking about with the classism, and that actually Carol kind of started saying it, that many of us see the classism and then we think in color, but we don't see the underworkings of how classism really works. And so a lot of people of every color are in this lower class and they don't know it, and they think that they're not because they got this perception of the complexion with protection or something like that. And it works in certain instances, but they don't see where it doesn't work. So when your Social Security gets cut and things like this, and these kinds of things happen that affects everybody, then we see the serf lord thing that's actually happening. But I really enjoyed your talk, and continue with the work.
Thank you.
Jordana.
TC, I wanted to ask you about the spiritual closet because I've never heard of it. And I think I have trouble doing inner work, and I feel anger and I get deeply into conflict, as some people here know, and I'm trying to be more measured, but I wondered how the spiritual closet might help.
Okay, the context for that is I got that from Malcolm. Sometimes we have conversations and they're not pretty conversations. They're heated, they're passionate conversations. And he was saying, as when Black folk have some conversations, we go into our closet to have them. We don't have them in a living room. We want this to be in a small space, and we're going to get busy. We're going to really cut and tear. So the spiritual closet for me was go in there and ask the hard questions. Because I have for maybe, I've been in ministry going on 40 years. And for 40 years, I asked the question, what is the relationship between capitalism and spirituality? And when I got the answer after doing the work for 40 years, I'm like, wow. And again, if you look at the work that was done by Kevin Cruz, One Nation Under God, he kind of outlines that. And you see some of those players. But when you talk about your spirituality, I'm naked. I'm naked. I got to break down to being just me, who I am, my pluses, my deltas, whatever. That's just me, and me being real with myself. And there are a lot of questions that I have, and I'm still asking those questions. I worked as a child protective service worker, and it was crazy how folk would take that what they read in the Old Testament to justify them having relations with their children. I'm like, but they said I read it in the Bible. I said, but what was the context of that? And when you hear that, people will take it out of context and say, well, this is why I did it. No, that's not. It never meant that. So just correct that. But that's just part of it. For me, I have to ask questions. And if I don't get the right answer, I have to ask it again. And something for me is fundamental is when I saw Barack Obama attack his spiritual leader the way he did it, I said, It made me ask a whole lot more questions. But if the teaching is sound, if you can strike against it, at some point you're going to get a good answer. Divine will, you'll just like it'll come to you. And that was a lot right there, but there is that spiritual closet. You have to ask the hard questions. And sometimes you have to repeat and repeat and repeat. That's me.
Can I add on to that, TC?
Go ahead, man.
Jordana, one of the things that Malcolm was talking about, if my memory select is, I believe it was in the Ballad of the Bullet. He was talking about how in our national stance, we need to leave our spirituality in the closet when we come into talking about things that pertain to like politics and stuff, so that we can find a way to get here, because people tend to get very passionate and bump heads when it comes to religion. So Malcolm was saying we need to look at Black nationals, and that's what he called it at the time, and leave the spirituality in your closet. Deal with it personally and in your circles, and then that way you won't bump heads with other people, because everybody's going to believe what they want to believe.
Thanks, Sundiata. Thanks for the question, Jordana. I think that's a super important question. And TC, I'm really hearing, it's not a quick fix. Go into your spiritual closet and you're still there in 40 years, and then, you finally get some insight. It's like, or more and more insight over time. And I can really relate to that. It's not always quick. Go on.
But if I may, and sometimes it means, if you look at the Christian nationalism and its relationship to Israel, it's out of order. It's out of order. The U.S., this is politics, but the U.S. relationship to other countries around the world, it can't be based on my own self-interest. If I'm concerned about people who are hungry, it should be people who are hungry all around the world. People who, not because you have lithium or you have, I'm part of your spiritual narrative. No, it's about holding everybody accountable. It's like during World War II. There were companies in the US who were making money on pesticides, and no one ever said, is there a rodent problem in Germany? They never asked that question, or they didn't want to, because it impacted their bottom line. So I'm simply saying, in our spiritual closets, we have to ask ourselves, or ask the divine, if we have that divine, what's going on? And then listen for the answer. And then when we hear it, we have to embrace it as being true. Because if I'm making, why is it that in wartime economy, in this country, in historical context, everybody make money? That's why they're so fast to go into war. But in a peace economy, it's like, well, or during my conversation with reparations, I saw India tell Africa, we can provide medicine for HIV for $1 a day. But the IMF said, no, you won't. No, you won't. So either we're going to be the good Samaritan every day, or we're going to be a good capitalist every day. So, I mean, those are the questions that I ask. And then, do I want to be a millionaire so bad that I'm willing to exploit somebody else? I want to exploit and misuse somebody else to make me the king or the queen. Anyway, I do have a soapbox.
Go on, Diane.
Sounds like TC taking everything that you said and all the things we're all adding, it sounds like a really solitary journey, because there are not, I mean, the rewards, they're going to end up being internal. It's going to be a feeling that you have to cultivate within yourself, because all the external rewards are poison.
Diane, you know this to be true. We used to sometimes communicate on Facebook, but sometimes for me, I hear a different drummer beating. I see a different vision of the world. And when I see people, I'm not trying to get flowers from you. When I see the work that you're doing, Lane's doing, and the other folk online who are doing, I look at that trail, I say, I can follow that trail. I see integrity. I see purpose. I see vision. And sometimes when you're on that solitary trail, you can nod and say, that's, yeah. Because they speak in that truth to power. We don't have to agree on what's being said, but you say, I can see the power and why it's being said. When I met this great pastor, her name is Yvette Founder. She's over the City of Refuge, and she has a community of everybody, but it really champions gay, lesbian, transgender. We spent an afternoon together, and we didn't even know each other, just talking. But sometimes you can see you can see into that person's life what they're doing, what they're saying, and you say, yeah, I can get with that. Because you can see the purity of it. Then you see others. There's a brother named Carlton Pearson. He caught hell because he said, maybe we need to take hell out of this equation and begin to celebrate. And in his life story, you can see everything begin to unravel. But when you take the path less traveled, doesn't make you better, but it means that you may be more thoughtful about what it is that you're doing. And folk won't amen you, and folk won't run up to you and pat you on your back. And you just look in the mirror and say, oh, I did the best I could today.
Yeah, I'm sorry, go on. I cut you off there, TC? Yeah, he's a really powerful, he's got a really powerful story there, and sad and also really inspiring. And I also just want to say, I'm hearing everything you're saying about that solitary path. And I'm also hearing at the same time, TC, that you're saying that it's a very related path, that you're meeting those people you disagree with love. You're entering into relationship with them. You're connecting with them. And so it's solitary, but also very connected, it feels like.
I think the term is purpose driven, but sometimes it's purpose driven, but it's sometimes the story of the emperor with new clothes. Sometimes you can be in organizations like labor or politics, and they'll say, this is a new idea. And they'll hire folk to say yes. You didn't hire me to say yes. You hired me to bring my best self to your situation, to give it another lens, to see something that the other folk aren't seeing. And so when you speak your truth to power, a quick story, working for CPS, Child Protective Services, and we were going through hell. And I reached out, I formed a relationship with the Secretary of New Mexico. I formed a relationship with the head of the department. And I'm like, we need to hear from you. We're hearing from all these other people, but you have to be the one to bring a voice of solidarity, or we're doing a great job. And she finally stopped everything and brought everyone into the room and said, Mr. Wilson called me out and said you needed to hear from me. That's why she hired me. But also there are times when people, when you're in a crisis, they'll amen what you're doing, but you're going the wrong direction. Every now and then you need to hear from somebody saying, wait a minute, that's not what we need right now. So sometimes we say, this is a song that says, I'm just a nobody trying to tell everybody about somebody who can help everybody. But it's just that simplistic. I'm not always right. Sometimes my wife could probably speak to it more than anybody else. I get so fed up with being fed up, it just oozes out in my private conversation. My passion is just so overwhelming. She's like, where did that come from? It's just there. So sometimes you try to keep it in a box, but sometimes my toxicity just oozes out because I'm so passionate about it, and I'm like, I feel so frustrated. But I've learned to encourage myself. And sometimes, but I also learned to keep brothers and sisters around me to encourage me. And some of the faces I see on the screen have been there to encourage. Because when I went to Slovakia, it changed how I saw white folk. Because of the narrative that the Slovakian people, I did my homework, they had lived as slaves. They had been under thumb. I had met other folk who had been under thumb. So when you sit and break bread with people who have been in a struggle different than mine, but they've been in their struggle, you can nod and say, yeah, we've been there. And we yet here.
I would like to say something. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, Jeanette, we can.
Well, I would like to say, well, I'm TC's wife, but I just really want to give kudos to my husband. I remember kind of maybe, no, not so new in our relationship, but I lived in Oakland and people were losing loved ones due to violence, like gun violence. And I remember him having this march when he would get all groups of people together from every religion background, from every color, and they would come together. And I didn't understand it at the time because I was like a Baptist, right? And I was like, why are you getting all Muslims and Catholics and Baptists and all of these people together who don't have the same faith? But it wasn't so much about the faith that he was getting them together. It was about they had experienced loss and that the community had all came together and they would go out and march and they would play drums and, you know, they would pour libations to the ones that, you know, people had lost. And I just thought, wow, I felt like he was so many years ahead of me, you know? But at the time I was like, why is he doing this? Why is he bringing all of these different people together? But as I've grown spiritually and not so much religiously, I find that that was such a wonderful thing because it was letting people say that I see you, I feel your pain, you know? And so I just give kudos to him. I think that sometimes the journey, you may seem like you're walking it by yourself, but sometimes you have to walk it by yourself, but you have to be true to your passion. And he is very true to the person that he is and the passion that he has for the people.
That is so good to hear from you, Jeanette, and so nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
I guess lastly, that solitary walk, and I think we've all walked it. Because when when people in your house look at you cross-eyed, why are you doing that? That's when you know there's a fine line, right? There's a fine line. Sometimes your mama say, well, I don't know why you saying what you're saying, but yet you saying it. Or your brother saying, you saying it, but you got to walk it now. We've all had that experience. Because when your family look at you like, but I'm thankful for, I'm gonna call her name, Lily, Lane, and Sister Juan, cut trails that I could follow. And as I see your faces, I see some smiles when I said some things, because we understand we have felt those same things. So I'm grateful for y'all making room for me.
I want to say something too, TC. And I feel you have been such an ally for me in my struggle to trust myself and you know, believe in myself and feel my power and go out there in the world. So you're also an amazing ally. I really appreciate that.
Lily, for those who don't know, has been one of the main drivers and organizers of World Work seminars. Some of you don't know about World Work seminars, but the work that we do, Lily and I do, and TC process work and world work developed by Arnie and Amy Mendel. And yeah, so Lily, thanks for you're still doing amazing stuff there. So
thanks, Lane.
Lane, did you hear how remember you asked me a question a long time ago about how do you remain calm with all the pressures that are on Black people, and why am I not mad all the time? And I gave you my answer. TC just gave you an answer too. He wasn't answering that question, but he spoke to it, because it will take you to you got to reel it in. You know, you can't stay there forever because you will lose your mind. Right, Diane?
Thanks, Sundiata. I just want to speak to that alone thing, and that sometimes even the people in your own house, that when I started to study with Ken Hardy, who's been my mentor and teacher around race for a long time, and I used to go to, you know, his workshops, and I would come home and I would just be so torn apart by, you know, the truth that people were speaking to me, that, you know, directly to me, not just me as a white person, but me as how I was comporting myself there, you know, and I was just torn apart for weeks and months afterwards. And she was like, why do you do that? Why do you keep going back there? And then the next year I would go back. She says, why do you do that? And there you are again. And it was just like, I just know I just need this, you know, and you know, and now I'm teaching with him, you know, and after I taught with him, you know, like I was also like, oh man, because of some of the feedback that I got, you know, and it's still, but there's it, I just have to. There isn't a way not to do that and be true to myself. So anyway, it's just a little way that I can hear what you're saying there, TC.
So TC, what do you think about what Lane just said? You must do it.
You do it. And it's that drum beat that you hear. And for me, when I know that I'm doing the right thing, I didn't quit 100 times. But I keep coming back. And because some of the things that I work the hardest to do, sometimes they get to a point where they take a toll. But it's the work that I said I wanted to do. before I knew anything about who I was, I said I wanted to be the first rung on the ladder. That's the rung that gets stepped on. That's the one that's where that first foot goes. And I've seen others be as successful as they can be in the way that they define success. But for me, I'm not a rich man, but I am rich in the gifts that have been given to me by the colleagues that I walk with. The work that the Racial Justice Collaborative is doing is so rich and so important. When I was asked to be a part of it, I couldn't say no, because I see the value in what you're doing and the way that you're doing it. The work that was being done by the Mandels and World Work and Process Work have been so important and so enriching. And it's a spiritual thing. Some of us are planting and others are watering. Whichever one you're doing, keep doing it, because it's touching so many lives. If it's just that one life, at that one moment, it's important. Jeanette spoke about the march we were doing, and we had configured ourselves to address any issues that we had came up with. And that day we met a woman who was being battered by her partner. And we got the male so tied up in pouring libations and celebrating. By the time he came back, his spouse was in a safe place with water and food and all the sustenance that allowed her to keep moving, and with counseling services that will allow her to grow the way she needed to grow. But when you see folk doing great work, affirm them. Say you're doing a great job, as opposed to saying, well, you are not doing A, B, C, D. Well, if I had the resources, I could do some of that. And again, I go back to, I've learned not to take money from everybody. Everybody who gives you money is trying to tell you they know how to do it better than you. And that's not so. They have a different way. It's not better, but it may work for them, but it might not work in your community. So that's my learning.
Thank you, TC. Julie, you put something in the chat. Do you want me to read it, or do you want to say it yourself? I'll read it. All right. This talk hit so many deep places. Thank you. I've been working with my childhood dream again lately, which is me standing alone with my dog in the middle of my childhood home, which is on fire, wondering if my family has gotten out. I think you filled in a price of the ticket piece for me. Thanks for all of this. So much deep wisdom. Thank you, Julie. Wow, I see your feeling about that. I just want to thank Jordana also for all of your work and help with I don't know if anybody's seen the chat, but a lot of the key things that TC has been talking about, that people have been talking about, Jordana's been putting in the chat with links and stuff like that. That's really so helpful. Thank you. And Sundiata, and then we're going to go over to Frank to lead us out.
I just wanted to ask, Brother TC, you spoke on being a Malcolmite, and I studied his work myself. And so I wanted to ask you, how do you balance the philosophy of where Malcolm was coming from with self-help, self-improvement, concentrating most of the energy in self, and then expanding, because that's what I've done, expanding like to other groups outside of what will be considered the surrounding cultural community for me. And, did you come to any kind of problem or clash, or did you see a natural progression into working with different groups?
I ran into Dr. Cross. Dr. Cross, who did the thing around different kind of Black folk.
Okay.
So once I got that, I allowed other folk to be who they need to be, but it was a natural sojourn to share openly. And when I first got to New Mexico, I met some brothers, and we had a men's group that we read books, but there was some bad dudes in there, and I'm iron sharpen iron, and so to me it was a natural to do that. But that self work, that individual work, is a must.
Yes.
And my other teacher's in the room, and she says something every morning. You have to sit at God's feet. Now, however you define God, but you have to sit at that divine spot. I'm not divine at all. I'm messed up. But you gotta find that for me is how do I root myself in my daily journey? Because I meet some brothers from all walks and some sisters from all different kind of walks. And sometimes they pour into me something that I could never seen and never understood, but they'll bring clarity. And I'm like, oh, that little light bulb will go off.
Thank you.
Lane, you're
TC, I just want to say you are somebody who has poured into me things I've never seen again and again and again over the years. And I'm so grateful for you. I'm
thankful for our relationship. This conversation, when I started, you asked me if I was nervous. I'm sweating like a pig. For this technology for the ministry, I don't have to do anything. I just turn it on and someone else does all that. And I know about OBS, but I can't make it work. But this dialogue has been healthy for me in this season because I was able to be with the folk who've come and to hear and to learn. Because one of the things that I've learned is if I could continue to learn about how to improve myself, because I think I'm looking at what we're going to have in the next 40 some days. And it makes me say, if it's not for the allies, we're across the country, some across the world, how we can support each other if this thing goes south.
Right, exactly.
Thank you, TC. That's exactly our belief. And that's what building relationships, building community, all of you gathering us, because when this thing goes souther than it already is, we have to have somewhere to go. And so we're trying to create that vessel for all of us.
And work together so it doesn't go south.
Yeah.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Thank you, TC. It's
You're
great to
welcome.
see you. I've seen your impact on the process work community over the years, and it's just great to be reconnecting.
Thank you.
So Lily, while you're here and we spoke of process of world work, we need a world work. Is there any way that can happen anytime soon?
I don't know soon, Diane. There's a, there are things to talk about and put our heads together and see how, and that's what we're trying to do in the moment, harvest from all the voices in the community, the different experiences, what works, what doesn't work, what's hurtful, what can be done in a different way. So, which I think is an important thing also for all of us to do. And then I'm sure, something will emerge.
At the right time, it will.
Yeah.
I just wanted to say that I was at the 2017 World Work in Greece, Lily, where I met you, although there were lots of people. I was with Diane and her sister and Dr.
I remembered your
Nika Hobbs, and it was a very transformative event for me, and I will be the first in line to attend the next one and provide any help you might need. So
thank you, Jordan.
Thank you. And I just want to just frame it in terms of what you were talking about, TC. Where we're at right now in the process work, world work community is that we're going into our spiritual closet together. So that we can do the work that we have to do on our own so that we can do the work that we need to do in the world.
Ashe.
Ashe. Mm.
Yes.
Over to you, Frank.
Thank you, TC. Thank you, everybody, for coming. The theme we heard a lot about being in your closet and having to do that inner work and asking yourself the tough questions, and we all have to do that, but also realize you do it alone, but you're not by yourself. Because if you look around this room, we're all doing that work. We're all maybe in a different rung or a different step or down a different lane, but we're all doing the work and we're all going to intersect at some point and you see people. So you do it yourself, but not by yourself. So, keep that in mind, that as you go forward and you keep moving, you might not be able to see them all the time, but we're all out here doing the same work too. So, appreciate that. And I thank everybody for coming. I know we had some missteps with trying to get Eventbrite to work. We're working on that, and hopefully they keep making changes, which keeps making things harder for our folks to get in. But we're going to keep pushing forward with that and make it easier for everybody next time. So we have at least one more event coming up at this year. Not sure of the date and the title and everything. So again, if you go to Eventbrite and you add us to your, I don't know if it's favorites or people you follow, it'll give you an email saying, hey, they've got an event coming up. But we think it'll be at some point in October, an hour-long conversation with some people about some stuff. So it might be interesting to come and tune in and join us. I just want to thank everybody for coming and turn it over to you guys. Have fun.
I just also want to say, if anybody if anybody wants the election to go in a way that you want it to go, don't just hope, work. So you can, every day, every election, I call voters in swing states and talk to them. And so research how to do that. If anybody wants to email me, I can let you know ways to do that. It's really important thing. Sorry to throw in that little public service announcement at the end. So sometimes we have kind of an after party. After our events, we can decide if we want to do that or not. If anybody wants to chat with each other, more informal thing. Oh, thanks, Frank. Gonna get the recording completed and out to people. That's fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Nice to be with you all.
Thanks for staying up, Lily.
It's great to see you all. Great to see you, TC. Thank you
Good
for
to see
sharing.
you, my sister.
Thank you. We'll be in touch.
Great to see you,
right.
Lily Moo. Thanks for coming.
Thank
Ciao.
you all.
Thank you, everybody.
I'll stay if anybody's staying, but I don't know if anybody's staying, so.
I'm gonna go take care of my dog who's been patiently waiting till
Nice.
6 and it's 10 now, so I gotta take her out.
Love to you, Lily.
Ciao, ciao. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks, TC. And thanks, Lane, for reading my comment. As you could see, I couldn't bring myself to do it at the moment.
I'm so glad you wrote it, though. Wow, that is so
many
wow.
things that TC said. I was like, oh, I mean, the religious stuff and so many things, so many synchronicities and things. Thank you for doing that. I appreciate it. And
Great.
thank you for this whole talk. It's been wonderful.
You and I are kind of, see each other on LinkedIn, but yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I've been in a few of your process work classes and I see you online a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah. Nice to see you here.
You too. Nice to see all of you.
Those notes are great. Ooh.
I just want to say hi to Anastasia from Ukraine. It's so
Hi.
great that you came. What was as a Ukrainian, how was it to hear all of that?
Oh, I had a lot of feeling, especially it's interesting that before this meeting, I had a quite difficult conversation for me with Austrian man, because tomorrow we have voids in Austria. Maybe my English is not so perfect for express everything, but yeah, and we have here in Austria not really good political situation now. And I came to this meeting very emotional, with a bit shaking, because yeah, it's really scary somehow, and it's difficult to understand how it's possible to make it better. And I'm very, you know, I become calmer when UTC started to tell your very personal experience. And then I do believe that all of us, we go through some conflicts like this. And we just become more human. And what I feel, what I experience from this wonderful meeting with all these wonderful people is just that we really, I guess all of us had some experience, some conflict, some experience which make us more humanistic, more humans. And I was very grateful this very alive moments, because it's something very truly alive. And just like this, because we can't study ideas, yeah, we can't study really philosophy or how to create ideas. We can just live through this, we can experience, we can live our myths and bring it to like ideas. Because I go through this, like each of us, I guess, was a bit like Job in his life, like book of Job. Yeah, each of us could have this story of Job, this myth of Job. And I'm just very grateful to hear this story. And I'm very grateful for everything happened here, like Frank, your help with Link, and Elaine. I just very grateful. And this few minutes I had now, it's just I'm very grateful that I had this place.
Thank you, Anastia.
Mm.
Yeah, Jakui. And yeah, just to give some context, you're not in Austria because you're on vacation. You're in Austria because the Russians invaded and bombed your country.
Yes. Yes.
And the Austrian elections that are happening tomorrow, the leading party, the front runner is the far right party.
Yes.
Oh, it's very scary what's happening there right now.
Yes, I'm very scared.
Just to give some context, yeah.
What does that mean? What is the far right party? In
Far right means anti-immigrant, racist,
okay.
White nationalist.
Okay. Same as it means here.
Yeah.
Basically.
Yeah.
Yes, it's very similar situation. And you know, I think that this comfortable life, for example, Austrians have for quite time, this very comfortable life, to make people very dissociated from these feelings when you live through conflicts, when you live through some experience of life in its wellness with dark parts of life, you feel this life better. But if you all the time in very good, convenient and comfortable consequences, then you can lose this some special human being feeling. So a lot of people here in Austria, they just want to be apolitical. They don't want to participate in anything because they feel comfortable without this. Nothing bad can happen with them. And if I tell that, but some people have no water, they can tell me, oh, I don't think this world so bad.
You're talking about the disease of privilege, that as privilege can strip away our humanity.
Yes, too much comfortable. When we have too much food, yeah, when we in too much comfortable life, then we can lose something very important for us, how to understand and be involved in this life. I think it's not by chance in ancient Greece, artists should be in a very low level of like conditions, like very basic. And sometimes I just can't understand what's going on, because it's so difficult for me to live with in these circumstances where, for me, it's enough to have some simple things in this life. But some people, they need more, so I should pay more to them, so I should be in this rush too. Like, it's so difficult, because when I stop, then I'm alone here, just few of us like this. But mostly people in politics, in voids, in everything, they just in this without stop, more and more, faster and faster.
Oh, wow. Thank you for speaking. I feel so many tears. Thank you.
Yeah, that was deep. Very deep. It's almost like if you don't understand any struggle in your life, it almost disconnects you to people who are struggling.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly.
And I do believe I had very beautiful process work group with Daya Mia from Japan, and we talked about things like this, that I'm a bit tired. It's difficult to translate. I was just so emotional before I met you, and this story of TC, and it's too much emotions for me. Sorry, it's difficult to digest all this and translate and calm down myself.
You're doing great. And I understand everything you're saying, and I feel very moved. Thank you. Oh, I wanted to take a pause, but I had my own question, which I feel like ties into wars. It ties into things you were saying, TC, and it's a question I'm struggling with, that anybody can speak to. it goes back to politics. You were talking about politics, TC, and it goes back to capitalism. It goes back to class. It goes back to, and it's, I mean, it's really, maybe it's a simple question, but, and it goes back to wars. It's, I was sharing with a group of people in a circle, small circle, and we were talking about, somehow we'd gotten onto social investments or to investing. And I was saying that with the very little bit of money that I have, I've been trying to figure out where to socially invest it, because I did not want to invest it in war machines or, and it's a very small amount. And then someone said, well, in particular, because you have a small amount, you should just invest it and make as much money as you can. And I said, I'm sorry, I'm not okay with that. I know I won't make, I'd make very little money, but it's not okay with me, because I know that a lot of these other investments are made into war machines and weapons, and I'm not willing, or tobacco, or things that I'm completely against. But there was this huge confrontation around where to draw the line. And of course, somebody then said, well, you're using a computer, right? And I said, it's true. I use computers, I use cell phones. And they said, well, what about how all of the equipment that we use is sent off in barges to Bangladesh and to poor parts of India, and poor people, mothers, children, have to sort through that and are radiated, often get sick or paid 25 cents an hour. So where do you draw this line? And in a capitalist country, where do we keep drawing the line? And I still go back to Marx, in my book, and I still go back to, where is that line? And we all have to decide, but it's so many of my friends are flying in airplanes everywhere, all over the world, all the time. They're teaching incredible work. And I had made a commitment about 25, 30 years ago that I would only fly three times a year. And yet I don't know what to, I invite the question with my friends who fly all the time. And again, it's like, well, I can get thrown back to, well, I use computers. I mean, all money is blood money. And where do we draw the line? So I'm just throwing that out. If anybody wants to speak to that, I'd love to hear your thoughts.
That's an interesting question. And it ties into all the other interesting questions, the question about how are we implicated? Do we think about it? Capitalism, class, and even race.
Race, absolutely.
And it all seems like the things that you're not allowed, or they make taboo, the things that you just know, somehow you learn, you're not supposed to talk about those things. And so, it's what TC said. We're on our own. We really are on our own. We're on our own journey. There's people around us. We gather people, but what we do, what I do, how I see things, that is up to me. And I notice if I say I'm this, and then I see that I had an opportunity and I swerved, or I'm this, and I see that I'm getting ready to fall into a hole, but I go ahead, I fall into the hole. And because I couldn't swerve, those are the choices that we make. And to me, this is our journey. This is the life. And then, and we get through it, or we see, or we find out, or we don't. So, and we're all doing that about everything.
If I may, I think, I've done that with social responsible investing. That's all you can do. Like you talk about the election, and I'm pissed at both sides because politics go towards the middle. I ain't never been in the middle. I have never had the luxury of being in the middle. And the fact that I'm a senior citizen, I'm like, y'all dealing with Medicare. I'm like, Lord Jesus, you spend more out of pocket for this or that. So I'm like, at some point, for politicians, I want them to speak to my issue. Because in our house, we're talking about, I'm having a hard time with the Democratic Party because they're not speaking to poor people's needs. And one of the things that I worked on a living wage campaign back in the 90s or 80s. They're using the wrong terminology. It's not living wage, it's sustainable wage. So I'm like, wait a minute, I'm gonna dumb down, but I understand what's at stake. But I also know what's going on. You want to talk to the middle, which don't include me, but I don't want the food. I don't want that I don't want that. But you want me to take the lesser of two evils, and the fact that we call them one evil, that makes me want to have a drink. And I can't drink enough to get that taste out my mouth. So, but that's what it comes down to. To me, who is it? Now I'll be done. Clinton was probably the best Republican in the guise of a Democrat. So I mean, so at some point we have to say, I'm going to make this decision. I'm going to live with it. And I'm doing the best I can with what I got.
Yeah. And at the same time, waking other people up to what they may not being aware of is been a part of your walk in life, and probably all of us on this in this discussion right now. So, and then taking the heat when that brings up the taboo feelings in them. And so I think I appreciate the lifting up of everybody here to, what did you say earlier? Something, TC, just about, you got to take the heat, and whatever energy you have, hopefully you can sit in the room long enough with each other at the table to be in brotherhood, be in sisterhood, be in otherhood with each other by the end of it. Otherhood meaning other besides the pronouns he, she. Sorry, I'm trying to include the full range of pronouns there. I didn't mean by othering, but inclusive of others.
I look at these small windows and I'm just happy that this is possible.
Catherine and Tom, do you guys want to? It would be nice to hear your voices.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry for in and out. I'm still dealing with COVID, so I'm pretty wasted, but I just wanted to be here to honor TC, your work, and Lane, your work, and just appreciate the that level of integrity and authenticity and soulfulness and telling it like it is. So appreciation. Oh, thank you. Yeah.
Nice to see you, Tom.
Yeah, good to see you.
Hope you feel better soon.
Every day a little bit better. Yeah. And TC, you might appreciate this with your attunement with, tell me if I'm saying the words wrong, for your experience, your attunement with what I'll call Christ consciousness, how we're more than our bodies and our ego identities and our stories, that we are one in the spirit at the deepest level of our being. So when my body goes through suffering in different levels, reminding myself that, yeah, there's that's taking place that I'm aware of, and it's not who I am. And I think it's similar to we all wear different, I call them outer costumes, but we go deep enough and we get to that place, all our blood's red and all our souls are joined together. So I appreciate the interface of spirituality, real spirituality, and political social justice activism. And that's about it for me. Thank you.
Shay, thank you.
Thank you for inviting me to speak, Lane. I am sorry I came late. I was having difficulties. I think, plus I also appreciate very much being able to be here with you all, here, each of you. I think, TC, of the things I heard you saying in the last while that I've been here, is you have to ask the questions, but the important thing for me was hearing that you have to then listen for the answers. I think that's my takeaway today, is being reminded to listen for the answers. Somehow it touched me. So thank you.
Thank you, everybody. I have to go. I have to lie down. My cancer is calling me to lie down. I'll see you. Thank you.
Thank you so much in the midst of all of what you're going through, Carol, for coming.
Thank you, Carol.
Thank you. Thank you all for putting this together. Yeah.
Good healing.
I think I'm going to have to jump too, my friends. Thank you so much, everybody. TC.
Okay, yeah.
Love you.
So thank you, everybody, and see you again.
Keep on keeping on. Keep on keeping on. Oh.
All right.
Just what he said, just what Tom said. Thank you.